So one of those bridges is age 50 with 20 years of special provision service for everybody under the special provisions. 50 and 20, they can skate, they can retire, they can go away. So, and to be fair, Mark, it's not just cops like DEA, FBI, ATF,
right.
U.S. Marshals, CD Financial, where health meets wealth.
Welcome back, everybody, to the CD Financial Podcast, CD Financial, where health meets wealth. I'm Marcus C., your host. That man across from me, as always, is Chuck D. Chuck, my man, how the heck are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Excellent. Good.
I
don't know if I know we've mentioned this in passing, but I don't know if people appreciate how much this means. This time we sit across from each other. Honestly, part of the reason we started doing this, right, is because we just sit around talking, you and I, anyway. And somebody suggested we probably should put a camera in front of us for more than likely for entertainment purposes, but I think there's some education coming out of this. Do you?
There's a ton of education coming out.
You feel the same thing I do. I always come here and I sit at this table and I think, this is just chewing the fat with Chuck, man. This is good stuff.
I come here and I think it's a privilege, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can enjoy yourself and, put out content for people to help them out. I mean, we really empower folks, so it's pretty cool.
Yes. And normally most of these conversations go over a couple of glasses of whiskey, but I mean, we don't do the whiskey for the sake of, keeping these things kind of on the straight and narrow, right? But I enjoy this so much, this interaction, and it's a lot of fun. So I appreciate it, and I always look forward to doing that. And I just wanted to put that out there because, this isn't forced. I mean, honestly, we turn off the camera and we probably have the same conversation.
Yeah, it'll veer a little farther away to other places, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, okay, so today, our topic for today, special provision law enforcement, right? And you mentioned this to me and you presented me to the idea. And when I heard about it, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and I don't know if this happened for you, are you a crime show guy?
I've been known to watch my cop shows.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Investigative, things. My wife Angie loves solving mysteries and stuff too.
Yeah, I get a kick out of it too. And when you mentioned this, because the first thing, because we're going to be talking about years involved, there's this entire trope right amongst these crime shows where you have the guy, one day before retirement and he's out in the field and then he gets shot and dies just before he hits his 20. But you always hear him talk about that, right? Just get their 20 in. I get my 20 in and I can retire. All I need to do is get my 20 and retire. Is that what we're talking about here? Are we talking about just getting 20 years in and then I'm done? I don't have to think about anything?
No, that's what we're talking about. For some people that tune in, they might be thinking about that.
Yeah.
For others, maybe not so much, right? So one of those bridges is age 50 with 20 years of special provision service for everybody under the special provisions. 50 and 20, they can skate, they can retire, they can go away. So, and to be fair, Mark, it's not just cops like DEA, FBI, ATF,
right.
U.S. Marshals, because I worked with all four of those. I've worked with Social Security, sorry. Not Social Service. Who am I thinking of? The guys who guard the presidents.
Secret Service, yes.
Secret Service. There was a small office pretty close to us, actually right here, just 15, 20 minutes away from the office here. So Secret Service, Border Patrol.
Yeah, ICE.
Yes. Immigration Customs Enforcement.
Right.
CBP Special. If they got hired in 2008 or later, then they'll be forced out at and by the way, 57, they don't get a choice.
Okay.
They're forced out.
Okay.
They have to go. See, with other federal employees, they can plan and they can start to make adjustments, when they're 59 with 30 years of service or 57 with 30 years, they can go out, but they don't have to.
Right.
But with law enforcement, they're gone. 57, that's it. Air traffic controllers, they're a special group, 56.
Right.
So apparently they think they have even more stress.
High stress job.
And duress. Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want those guys, flying near each other up there in the sky. They don't do very well when they have any contact.
No.
Yeah,
No.
so
Planes contacting each other.
and to be fair too, you've got firefighters that are
Okay.
also in there, federal firefighters.
Right.
I work with quite a number in Region 5, New Mexico, but I've touched base with a number of those in the Western U.S. Yeah, so federal firefighters too, and some bases that have actual special provision. Law enforcement, not too many do, but some do. Oh, Department of Justice.
Oh, yeah.
DOJ. Right? Who else are we? We don't want to miss anybody. We don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
Right? But we know there's, the Capitol Police.
The
back
IRS
east.
has their own branch of
They sure do.
investigators.
Customs.
Yeah.
No, not customs. What am I saying? Criminal Investigative Services, maybe?
Yep.
It's IRS, CIS.
IRS, CIS.
Yeah,
There you go.
I've worked with a number of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they typically don't brandish their weapon or keep it on them.
Right.
They have one.
Right.
Yeah, but they're usually part of a joint task force when they're investigating somebody, and usually it'll go into FBI hands and other people's hands as well. And then the IRS gets involved with their own
Right.
CIS agents as well.
Right. And most of the IRS presidents are, I mean, they're I don't want to insult anybody. I was going to say they're mostly accounting types, right? They're most of the guys that are looking at books and numbers. They're not the guys who are brandishing weapons to
Yeah,
get people
that's
in line.
correct.
They're-
But the accounting types
yeah.
then put it into the hands of the
Right.
CIS
Right.
agents as well. So yeah, you've got it mushrooms into a lot of places.
Yeah.
But the typical ones you think of are DEA, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals. We don't want to forget BOP, Bureau of Prisons.
Prisons.
Everybody that works for BOP is considered law enforcement.
Wow.
Even the admin secretarial is considered law enforcement. And there was one other was just coming to my mind. Did we say U.S. Marshals? U.S. Probation.
Okay, U.S. probation we had
Probation
mentioned. Yeah.
officers, yeah,
Probation
for federal
officers.
courts.
Okay.
I work with a number of those folks as well. So there are, it like I said, it mushrooms out. There's a lot of people that are in a high stress job
Okay.
that look to get out maybe even before 57.
Okay, so that kind of was one of my questions too that came up immediately because we are talking finite time, right? You said 57 for most law enforcement, 56 for the traffic control
Yeah.
agents, right? So there is a finite limit. So when you're discussing things with them, should they just be looking at, hey, I'm going to get my minimum time and get out as quick as I can?
Well, I mean, let's talk about what minimums are required.
Okay.
So 25 years of special provision, law enforcement or air traffic controllers, firefighters, they qualify to leave. So let's say you're picked up at 22 typically, right? Or maybe even later. But maybe you got a job at 20 at Bureau of Prisons, at BOP, who knows? You could go at 45. I've seen them thinking about this in their late 40s.
Okay.
I've seen some guys talk to me about it. There's women too, of course. But, it's a lot more. The majority of folks in that special provisions tend to be male, but that's, you see everybody now.
Right.
And that's, we're good. We're open with everybody to help them out. And so you see them considering that, but your question was, what was your question? It was, would they? Right?
Right.
Do they talk? They talk about it, but it seems so young unless they have another position or another tasty job that they want to walk into.
Right.
Then typically they keep on clicking the years off.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up because in your experience, because talking off camera about this, it was a little different for mine. The federal agents, and I don't know as many as you do, but the ones that I have known over the years have been people who start out in local law enforcement, right, and kind of work their way in. So they're getting into that federal job a little bit later. This is not straight out of high school or college kids. These are guys late 20s, early 30s getting into the federal.
No, I have not experienced that.
But your experience is different, right?
Sometimes in marshals, maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them. That's why I don't run into as many probation officers, but U.S. Marshals quite a bit.
Right.
Sometimes they transition, but FBI and DEA, I see them coming out of college and getting hired.
Okay.
Right. Sometimes I've seen a lot of DEA guys, DEA ladies too, that just say, "I'm tired of waiting on the FBI." I have a family we work with, and he said to me, he goes, "Hey Charles, I interviewed with the FBI. They were taking too long. DEA came along, offered me the job. And 2 months later, the FBI came back and said, hey, we want to hire you. And he says, too late.
Working for the DEA.
Yeah, working for the DEA. So there's that. Also CIA.
CIA.
Yeah. I've met one or two.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said before, Secret Service, I have two, just not as many. It's not as big of a brand.
DHS too, Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, if we haven't mentioned them, holler out to DHS too.
Absolutely.
Yes, I have. So at 57, they're out. Let's explain the pension, how it works for special provision.
Right, because there is an earnings cap, right? I mean, there's an earnings limit.
No, there's a different calculation.
Okay.
And you might be
I think I'm
interchanging
conflating two ideas.
Yeah, you're colliding two different
Yeah.
subjects inside of special provisions. So let's talk first about how is their pension calculated?
Okay, let's start there.
Yeah, let's do that because a typical federal employee, it's 1% of your high three times your years of service, right?
Right.
Years of service times your high three times 1%. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Your high three average salary. Whereas the first 20 years of special provision service, law enforcement service, as we said, air traffic or firefighters, that's 1.7%. So it's a 70% jump in your pension.
Wow.
Now they pay that much more from their retirement deductions, but they get a whole lot more in their pension. So the first 20 years, I've heard it referred to as their golden years,
Right.
because they get so much more in their pension, 1.7%. That's a huge jump. Yeah. So the pensions are a lot more sizable. And then after the 20 years they do, then it drops down to 1%, just like a regular normal federal employee. But the first 20 years of more stressful duress type work, they get that 1.7.
Wow.
Yeah, so the pensions are beautiful. But now let's move on to that.
So then past that, because one of the things too that came up, and we just kind of touched on it in passing, the idea of getting their 20 in and getting out as opposed to staying in longer and maybe getting in some more years. What are the advantages to both, or is there an advantage, or is it strictly individual?
Well, it depends on so many factors. Mm-hmm. What's your debt obligation? What's your monthly expenses, right?
Right.
Can you afford to live on the pension if you go out early? Or do you have other plans to take on other jobs? Do you want to do a part-time job? Do you have a full-time job lined up for you? I watched a FBI agent from the Orange office, and he exited early, and he was doing security for malls across the coast. But it seemed to me like he was running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Yeah.
I mean, he was traveling a lot. Wow. And I don't think he did that in his federal job. So I was wondering, I was scratching my head going,
you're retiring.
What, are they giving you the match for your 401k like TSP?
Yeah.
But do they have a pension? No, most of those jobs don't have a pension, right? So he would have earned more. But, it was only 1% at that point, not 1.7. And there's the Special Retirement Supplement, the SRS.
Okay.
The supplement, that's the next subject that we were maybe crisscrossing.
I think that's what I was conflating, the two ideas.
Yeah. So the supplement will not be reduced if you make more than the cutoff as we record now is 23,400, right? Mm-hmm. So 23 grand. If you go over 23,000 in earnings after you start collecting the supplement, and that'll be sandwiched in with your regular pension check. So they won't separate it. It'll be all together. But at age
57.
No, that's right.
Sorry.
At age 57,
yes.
If you go over that earnings limit, they're going to start to take your money away. And in a quick while, like you make 20 grand over that, let's say you make 43 grand, you're going to lose your supplement altogether.
Yeah, and most of those guys are going to be, and gals, most of those people are going to be making at least that. I mean, that's
right.
That's
if
pretty
they're
low.
Going to get a job, right?
That's pretty low.
Unless they take on they get a taco truck and cash only.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that 57, some of them, for instance, the gentleman who took on the security, and a lot of them take on security jobs afterwards. They take on that security job, and he can make as much as he wants to before age 57. So if you retired even earlier than age 57, then you would be able to get any job for any amount you want to make. And then at 57 is when they might kick back.
Okay.
Now,
So there might be some advantages because, again, we're not talking about just getting in your 20, quote unquote, to use that tired old trope, right, to get in your time and get out. But there might be some advantages to doing so for certain people, depending on if they have a job lined up in the private sector where they're actually going to be making significantly more and it's worth their while up until 57.
Yeah, so they can pull their pension.
Right.
They can pull that supplement that won't be taken away till 57 because of your earnings. And they can get a new job. So it's sort of like they've got a fat pension.
Right.
And they got a new job. So in that corridor, let's say you're 52 to 57, you got 5 years where you can be a baller. You can really earn a bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
You have your federal pension with the supplement unreduced, and you can also have your other job. So there's an argument to be made for both. But you got to look at that and run the numbers, I would say. I mean,
and that's where you start
back to the numbers, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that's where we start to get into real individualized planning or plans going forward, right?
Yes.
Because everybody's going to be a little bit different based on what their needs are and what they want to do.
Absolutely. Some people live on very little or they don't spend much. I'm like that. I really, honestly, I wouldn't know how to spend money if it wasn't for my wife showing me how. It's just a sad statement of that. It's a true story. I really didn't know how to spend money.
We're going to edit that out for the Angie's sake.
We're going to be fine. I just didn't know how to spend money, right? Yeah. And then she came along and I was like, oh, okay. I got myself a Texokie. Texans, a lot of them know how to spend, right? And to be...
We know how to...
And by the way, if you think I'm a chauvinist, that's not the case because if I look at her parents, her dad's the spender.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her mom's the one who's really, she just doesn't spend money. And I'm just was always like that. I was like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to spend the money. I just thought I was supposed to make it. So, I mean, now I got nice cars and a beautiful home, but I really still, a lot like my dad. The Eastern Europeans, I say that all the time, they're very close with their money.
Frugal.
Very tight. I've talked to some Polish families, I'm Slovak half, but I've talked to some Polish families who said, oh, we were taught never to reveal what kind of income we make or what kind of money we have, not buy a big home. My grandparents, they drove a Ford, Granada? Yeah, I mean, they had a nice, modest home. They never had a loan. They didn't believe in the banks.
Yep.
They never had a loan. He bought 2 homes in his life, cash for both of them. So yeah, my dad was the same way. He didn't spend money. He drove a Chevy Vega 3-speed. I mean, that thing was a meat grinder. When you shifted. Yeah. And he told me, he goes, as a little kid, he goes, I should have kept that Volkswagen Beetle. That thing was way better than that Vega. Anyway, he would spend money on one particular thing all the time.
What's that?
Food.
Food, yes, good.
At restaurants, he was a little more careful, but not when it came to grocery shopping.
But by the way, I can say that about you, just to interject for a second. This man spends on food. I've never known you not to eat well.
I don't know if it's because the Eastern Europeans felt like it was your body, it was essential, and then my mom being Lebanese, it's like there's a love affair with food all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so we had the Eastern European mentality where you got to take care of yourself, and then the Arabic mentality was like, this is life, baby, right? Eating. Right, hummus and baba ganoush and lamb chops and kafta and chicken shawarma and man and kebabs and and what is it? We called it batlewa, but it's baklava. The world knows it as right. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of cuisine, and she didn't even make Arabic food. My mom cooked Italian,
right?
Because you make it faster in the kitchen. She told me, she goes, sweetheart, I'm not making that dish your Aunt Nellie makes. She goes, that takes her an hour and a half. I can make you this delicious meal in 35 minutes. Yeah.
I still have fond memories, and I know we'll have to, we've digressed a little bit.
We're going to come back.
We'll have to look back here in a second, but I do have to mention this because I know I have mentioned this about your mom in other podcasts, but she didn't know how to prepare food for 2 or 3 people. It was for 20 or 40. There were times when I would walk into the kitchen at midnight, driving all the way from New York City to Pittsburgh, right, to see you. And at midnight, I'd walk in and have a table full of food, and your mom apologizing because that was all she had. And I'm thinking, I didn't bring
and she'd make those spiced
that
olive
was so good.
And
Yes, cheese and
from the
meat
strip
and all.
district in
Yes,
Pittsburgh. And, oh yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, you're
stuff.
right. Cured meats and
Yeah.
cold cuts. Yeah.
So simple woman in a lot of ways, but when it came to food,
Oh.
there was nothing simple about it.
She
It was just
wasn't really
fantastic.
simple. But
Well,
that's okay.
in a lot of ways, at least the way I knew her, she was simple in a lot of ways. But
A lot of people
when
call her a diva.
when it came to food,
Yeah.
that was some,
That was
and,
her thing.
and that's good because considering that, because we're talking about retiring, and we laugh about it a little bit, we joke about it, but it's serious. People need to understand they need to have a concept of how they want to live.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because that's where we got off on this.
Right.
Right. How much are you going to cost? Right. Some of you can live on $4,000, $3,000 a month. That's awesome.
Yep.
Others require $10,000 and $12,000 or more a month. And so if you think you're going to walk away from a job because you're tired of the job, I don't want to use the wording fed up, but you got to be careful with that.
It's run its course.
You got to be careful with that. I had somebody retire recently, and I was encouraging him to go to 62, not special provisions. He did not make it, and now he's working part-time.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as he retired, and it's like, why didn't you just work it out and get him to get, they call it accommodations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a federal job. Let him accommodate you. At least run him through that. By the time you get through accommodations 9 months later, you'll be 2 months from 62, and then you can just burn out your sick leave and your annual.
Correct.
Yeah. So anyway.
I know we've touched on that on other episodes. Right. Yeah. Use that time. It's your time.
Yeah,
work right up until the end and then use that time. Absolutely.
Yeah. So should you retire earlier than 57? Again, we can't possibly know unless we look at your lifestyle, figure out what your monthly expenses are, go into your, we look at your leave and earnings statement, and maybe if your spouse is working too, oftentimes I don't run into that many single people among special provision employees.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, it's rare. With other agencies all the time.
No.
But they're more often than not married.
Interesting.
I mean, firefighters,
Yeah.
law enforcement. I haven't met a lot of air traffic controllers, just a couple. Yeah, maybe 3 or 4. But the other ones, they're all married, law enforcement. Telling you what. Yeah. So anyway, can you afford to? It depends. That's the answer, right? You got to consider a bunch of things. And are you going to pick up another job? And if you're going to do it after 57, what do you got to consider if you're going to get another job?
Yeah, you're starting over essentially in a lot of ways, right?
And you're held to that earnings limit, right? And you're going to blow through that ceiling really fast.
That'll be quick.
23 pounds is gone quickly.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's where you really need to look at part-time work, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, and then you might be doing something you really enjoy.
Yep.
You don't even care about the pay. You just want to stay busy.
Yeah, I recently had a conversation with a friend who similar situation, right? He's not in law enforcement, but retiring early. He's looking at right at 50 to retire, pensioned with his job. And we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, he says, at that point, I don't know. His wife makes good sourdough bread. I said, sell her bread. That's a great part-time gig. She does great
She
sourdough
makes her own sourdough?
She does, and it's fantastic.
I know 2 people here locally in SoCal that do that.
Yeah.
And that bread's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's a surprising amount of work.
Oh, yeah. Well, she does it. I told him, you're just the marketing arm.
Let's come back to that
Yes,
for our health
absolutely.
tip. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you go early? Do you go late? Late for special provisions is 56
Yep.
for ATC and 57 for everybody else. You're going to get forced out. So you got to be prepared for it and know what you're coming to. And you got to prepare for it here.
Yes.
And here.
Yes.
Because when you're just pushed out like that, you were saying that, last day of work and the cop passes away.
Right.
No, we don't see that. I don't see that. Yeah. Not much. Sometimes, here and there. What I see more often in my 16 plus years of doing this is shortly after they retire.
Right.
If they're retiring to nothing, some folks go quick. So don't go quick. Have a plan. If you know you're going to be gone at 57 for sure, then have a plan. If you're going to get another job and you don't care, that's not a big deal either. Because I've talked before about somebody who retired from a really high position and he got a job. Oh, he was 58 with 30 years of service. He wasn't special provisions, but he got a job from a local financial institution that pays him six figures to do basically nothing but to be on the board. And it works out really well. So he says, well, I'm going to lose my supplement, but I'm going to make X amount of dollars. So I don't care because I'm putting in, 4 hours a week, if that.
Wow.
Yeah. So they just needed somebody with a really smart head to direct things for decisions sometimes that will come up.
Good work if you can get it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You don't see that very often.
No.
But I see everything.
Yeah.
After the first decade, you really start to get exposed to a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Closing in on 2 decades, there's not a whole lot that can surprise you, but I'll never say never.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you mentioned that. We may not touch on it here, but mental health is a big issue. But preparing yourself mentally, because I think there's this idea everybody goes out to the golf course, right? You hit your retirement age, you're done with work, and you're going to spend you can only spend so many hours on a golf course. I don't care how much you love it, unless you're a pro when you're getting paid for it. But you have to have a purpose. You have to have a sense of what's coming.
That's right.
Have your head right as far as, what's going to happen when I'm not putting in my 40, 50 hours a week on the job, but I'm at home. What am I going to do to keep myself busy, to keep myself engaged and enjoy the retirement? Because the whole point of retiring early is to enjoy it, right? It's not just to get out of your job.
Yeah.
Some of law enforcement, a lot of law enforcement, they enjoy their job. So it's not that they're just trying to get out of something. There's got to be a purpose to it too.
U.S. Marshal I'm thinking about, little guy. He's probably 5'7".
Yeah.
Wiry too, like 147 maybe.
Not related to Tommy Lee Jones?
No.
Different U.S. Marshal. Go ahead.
Mixed martial arts guy.
Yeah.
He would go overseas to apprehend people. And I'd be like, really? Like, you just don't expect it. The Hollywood makes you think.
Yeah. It's The Rock. You got to have the.
Yeah, exactly. No, he'd just tie him up right if they try to flee. He'd just tie him up and then somehow get a pair of cuffs on him. I said, would they run? He goes, it's not like the movies, Charles. He'd say it's, once you get a set of cuffs on somebody, they're usually not fleeing and they're usually not that guy. And he'd put him on the plane, put him in his hotel room, put him on the plane, bring him home. Yeah, and that was his job, right? Now, sometimes you see some pretty burly guys that would be involved in, more often than not, from the holding tank to a federal court, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you'd see those guys. And on the street, too, apprehending, right, here locally and stuff.
Right.
I say locally, I mean domestically.
Right.
Right? Yeah, apprehending folks, right? Yeah, they would always.
But more often than not, real life makes a lousy movie. So.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't. But
okay, so you want another story?
Give me another story. I love this.
And then we're going to talk about how to calculate that supplement.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Special retirement supplement, and we can maybe work up a calculation for the special provisions pension too. Where were we? What the heck? So my neighborhood, but behind the gates.
Okay.
High dollar homes. High dollar. Ocean view, 1,000 feet above sea level. I'm walking the dog and there I hear a loudspeaker and I'm thinking, first I hear a siren and I'm thinking, it's a little early because I'm walking Barris at like 7 a.m.
Right.
Right? It's a little early for that. And then I'm like, that's weird. It sounds like it's behind the gate. It was behind the gate. And then we walk backwards. I go, come on, Barris. I go, let's go see what's going on. Because I hear the sound. And I look down this cul-de-sac, and there's like this big SWAT armored vehicle.
Wow.
I didn't tell you this story, did I?
No.
Oh, and they're on the bullhorn. I'm not going to get into specifics because maybe people could be listening. They could sort it out. But they're on the bullhorn. Don't move from the window. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here?
Yep.
Right? And it was a DEA bust, right?
Wow.
Had all kinds of people there. And you know how I know it was DEA? Because there's guys with rifles and stuff. Yeah. So me and Barris proceed away. I didn't think it was a good idea to get close.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Anyway, we proceed back out to the street because we come on the trail and exit out the street to get back to the house. And it said DEA there, and the guys in camo. There was a situation van. Yeah. Ooh. And the view from there is just gorgeous down the street. Yeah. So Sometimes it's like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all come out for that because it's, they get to gear up and they get to arm up too. So
Right.
And I ain't knocking them for that, right? They watch the same shows we watch. All right, so let's do a calculation.
Yes.
Let's say, a lot of you guys, a lot of DEA make like 160,000 more. Let's do 100,000 for easy math, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because then and the marshals make more than that too, but Bob probably not as much. But for easy math, let's do 100,000, okay? Do 100,000 times 1.7%, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's do 150,000. I changed my mind.
Okay.
Times 0.017 times 20 years. So how much is your pension?
51,000.
That's 51,000 annually, but that's only for the first 20 years. Let's say you did another 10 years. Okay, let's say you're 25 and you're out at 55. Okay. So let's do 10 years times 150,000 times 0.01. 15. So in that scenario, if you did 20 years regular, it'd only be 30 grand, but it's 51. You saw that number, right? Mm-hmm. So what's 51? Minus 30, that's 21, isn't it? What's 21 divided by 30? That's exactly a 70% lift, right? So it's a 70% lift. So in that scenario, you have 51 and 15, right? Mm-hmm. So we got 66,000. That's your normal pension.
Yep.
Now, what did I say? You're 55? You're going to retire? So you got a $5,500 a month, right? Pension, that's gross. It's not take home. You got to take out survivor benefit for your spouse. You got to take out federal health insurance, federal tax, and then maybe state tax too if you're in a state that taxes. Mm-hmm. So, it whittles down. But
real quick,
you got the supplement. So I did 30 years of service. Let's say I bought back 2 years of service, 2 years of active duty military. Mm-hmm. Well, then I would have tacked it on to the calculation for 12 years instead of 10 years. Mm-hmm. I worked from 25 to 55, but I did a couple years of military. You can add that in there. They will not use that in the calculation for the supplement. No. Oh. You bought it back and they'll push it into
bought it back. Yes.
You bought it back. They'll put it into your calculation for your pension, but not for the supplement. But you do have 30 years of service.
Right.
So we take those 30 years of service and we divide by 40, always by 40. And that you get it. What's 30 compared to 40?
75%.
75%. So you get 75% of your age 62 Social Security estimate payment. Mm-hmm. And so that's what that supplement is. They say, well, you're not old enough to collect Social Security because we forced you out at 57. Oh, and by the way, at 50, with 20 years of service, you could go. So you went at 55, we're going to give you that supplement until you're 62. And by the way, don't forget, we won't even reduce it if you get another job until you're 57. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get 75% of your Social Security pay. Let's say your estimate at 62 is $2,600. Or you're going to get $1,950 in addition to your $5,500. So your gross now is $7,450, $7,500.
A lot easier to live off of.
Yeah, $7,500, not too bad, right? Yeah. And if your spouse is still working, maybe it's not so tough.
Yeah,
right?
or part-time job like we talked about too.
Yeah. Or maybe you saved, $2 million in your TSP.
Possibly,
right?
Yeah.
And you're generating, I don't know, let's say you want to get 5% from your $2 million. It's a little aggressive, but if you're pulling from both your safe money split or separated, folks, from the money for income should be separated from the money for growth.
Yeah.
Right? We always say that.
Yep.
Yes. That's another, did I do that right? Yeah. Times 0.05.
Yep.
Right. Oh, well, if you take 5% out, that's another $8,300 a month. I think you're doing okay now.
I think you're all right. Yeah. Absolutely.
You got to consider taxes again, right? And if your spouse is working, you might be pushing yourself into a really high tax bracket. So you got to be careful. And you need somebody to help, maybe. If nothing else, just to split the money for income,
right,
for the money from growth that you can leave in your TSP, and by the way, you might need to if you're not 59 and a half.
Right.
Don't forget that, right?
Right.
Because how much is the penalty if you take your money out before 59 and a half in an IRA? What's the percentage?
I don't remember.
10%.
10%. Yes.
For an early withdrawal. You don't do that. What is the percentage?
10%.
10%. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until what age?
62.
59 and a half.
59 and a half. That's right.
Let's run it again.
59 and a half. 10%. Yes.
10% at 59 and a half,
yes.
right? Yeah. But so if you're 55 and you retire and you need that money from TSP for income or from your IRA or your 401k, you got to keep it at the TSP or the 401k.
Right.
Can't touch that money in the IRA. Yeah, because you're going to be subject to an early withdrawal penalty.
And part of the reason we always highlight the importance of having someone to guide you through all this is like what just happened to me, right? All these numbers start to run together after a while.
That's right, yeah.
Because in my head, and if you're working in your head, you're going to be doing all this math. And it's just after a while, the numbers just start to bleed together. This is where you need someone to separate out the different paths and the ideal path.
And don't feel bad. You're here for sex appeal. That's why you're here.
Talk about setting the bar low, man. That's yeah.
He's a clever one. Trust me. Don't let him fool you. He's a sleeping agent.
Yeah,
he's a sleeper agent. Yeah, there you go. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So we covered it. It's what is it? I was going to say 45, but no, it's 25 years at any age. Special provisions. It's 50 and 20, or it's at 57, you're gone.
56 or 57, depending on where you're at, you're gone.
SRS, it's supplemental payment. That'll end at 62, because that's when you're eligible to get Social Security. It doesn't mean you should get Social Security. It means you're eligible for Social Security.
Right. And again, another point where you have to weigh out pros and cons.
Yeah. And at 57, if you make more than that earnings limit, which is really low, you're going to lose most of that.
45, we said, right? Or no, 24.
23.
23. Okay.
As we record now, 23,400. Yeah. And so you don't want to, as long as you know that, then knowing is half the battle, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
G.I. Joe, yes.
So we're going to talk about sourdough?
You want to hit sourdough? Because I have a couple of health tips, but
let's come back to sourdough in another episode.
Okay, so
I can arm myself with the
table
with
sourdough
AI and the internet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So something that I wanted to talk about, because when we talk about health on this show, we give out these health tips and everything with a grain of salt, as always, right? A lot of this is food for thought to hopefully get people walking down a path.
There you go.
And trying things out, because this stuff might work for you. But we usually focus on physical, right? We have at least mostly focus on physical, but I think we need to talk about mental health too.
Sure.
So one of the things,
and people need help with that. Heck, I need help with that. Go ahead.
For me in particular, and
I'm not laughing at it, folks. No. You just got to laugh in life, otherwise it gets heavy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why make it heavier than it is? So let's laugh about anything we can, really.
So one of the things that I do, and I think a lot of people who would be watching this, taking care of aging parents, right? And when you do that, it's not just the physical aspect of running to appointments and doing grocery shopping and helping, maintenance in the house and things like that, because that's all part of it, right? But a lot of it too is making mistakes in how you take care of a person. There's no manual. I haven't seen the manual. Do you have a manual how to take care of aging parents?
I've made plenty of mistakes with my oldest son.
And
so, right, because he's special needs.
Right. And
you folks don't know it maybe, but Marcus does. Yes. And I've gotten better.
Absolutely.
I'm not awesome, but I'm pretty good now.
Yeah.
Keep your cool, man. Keep your cool and carry on. Don't lose your cool. I've been looking at him as somebody who's like, he is a savant, right? He's well past us intellectually. So I look at him as somebody I just have to protect from the outside world who doesn't understand him sometimes.
Right.
And so I say, oh no, let me get that for you. Oh no, folks, he needs some space, right? He doesn't need the space, but I see him like that. Yeah. So I can accommodate him when nobody's with us, but I see it. If I envision it like that, anyway, I'm going off.
No, it's okay.
I envision it like that so you can look the same way with your parents, maybe.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Sharon and I have always talked about, we admire you and Ange and how you've done with Isaac. Because again, you don't get a manual when this all starts off that says, here's what you need to do.
No, you don't.
You figure things out as you go, and you make a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been dealing with a lot in this past year, particularly anxiety and depression, because the mistakes weigh on you. And it's hard when you make
you can't put that on yourself.
Exactly. And that's my point. That's the reason I wanted to bring this up.
Fair.
Right. And this is part of the reason I wanted to bring it up and discuss it, because part of life is failing, right? We all make mistakes. We're all going to fail. But if you're failing, it just means you're trying, right?
That's right.
And in my mental health tip of today is embrace those failures. Don't let them weigh on you. Don't let them cause anxiety. Don't let them, cause depression. Embrace the failure, because if you're failing, you're growing, you're moving, you're going. If you're not failing, it's because you're not trying, that's not worth doing. So embrace the failure. That's my mental health tip. Don't let it weigh on you. Embrace the failure. It's a lesson I'm still learning, even as we speak today. It's something I'm still learning. So.
The older gentleman shared this with me years ago. He said, Charles, nothing beats a failure but a try. Right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, and it took me a minute to figure that out, but the try always beats the failure anyway.
Yeah.
So you failed, but you tried.
Yeah.
And the try beat it. Yeah. Right? And the other thing is fail forward, right?
Yep.
Don't fail and just stay down. No, who cares? Yep. Right? Successful people, they get up and they keep going. Every day, they come in and they show up for work.
Yep.
They come in and they show up for work.
Yep.
They come in and they show up for work. And the more I look back, the more I realize I'm just showing up, man. I'm showing up. And I want to do the best I can. Thank God I got half a brain, right? And I keep showing up.
Absolutely.
And I'm interested in new things and interested in taking in more knowledge. Yeah. And so are you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's growth.
And readers are leaders, Mark.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're a reader. Yeah. I've put myself in there, right? And I'm really enjoying it right now.
I'll wrap this up with sharing in part of what brought all this along. Mike Tomlin?
Born and raised, folks.
We're both Steelers fans. Okay, so
born and raised there, baby.
The other day, I'm watching Mike Tomlin on, I don't know what show it is, but they're showing a little clip of him talking to one of his young receivers, and he says, "You're not great today." He's pointing out he's not great. He says, but just because you're not going to be great today doesn't mean you shouldn't be trying in that direction. And I love that because it goes with what I was just saying about embracing failure. I may not be great today, but the fact that I failed means I'm trying, and it means I'm moving in the right direction.
Yes.
And I need to embrace that. So
love it.
I love Mike Tomlin. Boy, that guy is, you see him as this football player, right? And he looks like just this rough and tumble guy. He is smart in a lot of ways. Yeah. Wise man. So yeah.
What was it? Joey Porter Jr.? He had like 6 fouls against this one receiver.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was
I think it was Joey Porter who he was talking to, actually. I think that's who he was talking to.
Well, he's not a receiver then.
No. He's a cornerback.
Yeah. But it's like, hey, guess what? We're going to let him foul.
Yeah.
He said that. He goes, we're going to let him foul because who he's playing, one of the top receivers in the league, he's got to play him physical.
Yeah.
And we're not going to take that away from him. 6 fouls. 4 of them cost. The other 2, the receiver made the catch anyway, so they declined it, right? Penalty declined. But he says, I'm not going to stop him from playing his style. Yeah. He's somebody who runs into the fight, not away from.
Yeah.
And he said he saw that when he was, I guess him and Joey Porter Sr. were friends. He played on his team.
Absolutely.
And he saw him as a 9 or 10-year-old and said that about him. He says, the kid always was like that. Yeah. So I wanted him. Right when it came time for it, so he's developing.
Absolutely,
man. You gotta let your team fail too. We're getting off on this now.
Yeah, no.
But I've heard this expression with leadership. I'm still working on everything. Right? You keep leaning into it, and I tell my team all the time. I go, lean into the fear.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from it. Just lean into it. Sometimes we're gonna make a mistake. You know what? You got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, we're whipping out all these cliches, but they all work.
Yes, they do.
They do. Right? And so just go into it, right?
Yeah. And ultimately, again, getting back to the health aspect of it, when you embrace the failure, you keep that positive attitude that keeps you coming forward. And you say, you know what? I made some mistakes yesterday. I'm learning from them. Today will be a better day. And
absolutely. And you just keep going, man. That doesn't make you a failure. It just means you had a few failures. Everybody does.
Everybody does. That's how you succeed in life. Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this?
We tighten it up.
Man, I love it.
Straight up.
We need more Tomlin. We'll get some more Tomlin in upcoming episodes because that man is a genius. Folks, thank you as always for tuning in. We're happy to have you with us. This is always these wonderful conversations. We hope you enjoy them as much as we enjoy having them. CD Financial Podcast, where health meets wealth. I am Marcus. That man is Chuck D. Chuck, we're ready to wrap this one up?
This one's a done deal.
We'll see you next time, folks. Be well and talk to you soon.
Hit it. Call us. will help you out. And that link at the bottom, it works. Boom, it opens up the calendar. Okay, CD Financial, where health meets wealth.